Hello, my name is Tara Clark and I'm a child and youth care worker. In this video, we will be discussing narrative therapy. Narrative therapy is a strength-based therapy approach that aims to assist people by creating stories about themselves. These stories can help clients determine principles and ethics that they value, as well as knowledge and skills they need to obtain these values. Throughout this video, we will be covering different aspects associated with this form of therapy. Narrative therapists believe that by simply allowing our clients to tell a story of a past or recurring problem, it is a form of action towards change. Narrative therapists help to identify problems. Together, both the therapist and the client can identify and build upon alternative storylines that exist beyond the problem, thus providing a solution towards the problem. We hope you gain a new perspective while watching this video.
Hi there, I'm Martin Escaro. I'm a child and youth care practitioner. And when we talk about narrative therapy and who has contributed to this therapy, Michael White has been a main one. Michael White, born in 1948 in South Australia, started working with probation and welfare recipients, and later moved on to Adelaide Children's Hospital as a social worker. He got his undergraduate degree in social work at the University of South Australia, and later on in 1983, created and established the Dulwich Centre. Now, while working at the Dulwich Centre, Michael White, in collaboration with David Epstein, devised a new sort of therapy, narrative therapy. This therapy was created with a view of individuals' problems are separate from the individual. And it was their hope that narrative therapy will be used as a method to identify the skills and competencies that individuals possess in order to decrease the problems in the client's lives. Narrative therapy has traveled to many disciplines. Its techniques can be found in the styles of counselors, therapists, social workers, child and youth workers, social counselors, addiction workers, and the list goes on and on. More specifically pertaining to child and youth workers, a child and youth care practitioner known as Cynthia Davis outlines that narrative therapy is a source for youth practitioners to be able to create effective treatment plans. Cynthia Davis states that the effectiveness of narrative therapy lies in its ability to externalize the problem. This can be very effective in working with youth as it personifies the problem as a monster or an enemy. The treatment plan can then be used as a weapon of some sort to attack the problem or a tool in solving the problem. Werner van der Westenhuizen wrote that narrative therapy actually addresses three great deficits of career counseling. 1, the loss of meaning. 2, the lack of necessary depth to resolve issues. And 3, the inability to provide a method to make decisions upon conflicting values. Westenhuizen also states that this narrative approach works much better than career counseling, as it allows the client to think of the career not as just one choice, but as a factor that plays a role throughout their whole life. It's a tremendous role in helping them find what they want to be in life, as it strengthens their resolve to be the actor in the story that they wish to unfold. Comments on narrative approaches, stating that his view of Michael and David's development warrants great praise for its effectiveness in working with youth through a number of problems. These include encopresis, severe attachment and belonging, anorexia and bulimia, night fears, school refusing, even grief and loss. Remind us that we are unable to fully understand the depth of a problem and that the youth themselves are the expert. It is the youth who tells us the problem, which invites the youth worker to listen. Theorists who have contributed to the development and continued development of narrative therapy. Thank you.
My name is Michael Escaro. I'm here to talk about traditional narrative family therapy to all of you guys, the different techniques, and we can jump straight into it by talking about the first technique. So in the first phase, it's eliciting stories, and this helps us separate the family members, what they believe is a problem, like it could be the other family members of the problem, and it helps separate that. It helps them see the problem as a mutual thing, and it puts them together to work towards how to solve it. Next, following that would be recognizing culture disclosure. Many times family will have these negative attitudes towards towards themselves. This is due to cultural things. Like if something is not culturally acceptable, they will see it as a bad thing, and they will have all these negative emotions just build up. So what narrative family therapy does is it helps to identify those differences, and it helps them regulate it, make it become normal in the family. So the next step is externalizing the problem, and that is to separate the family from its current complications. And so when doing this, then they do this through questions asked by the counselor. And by doing this, it lowers down the need to blame another family member, which enhances their ability to communicate with each other through narrative therapy. Next phase would be exploring the influence of the problem. Now, we focus on the family, focusing on the problem. We need to understand the source of it, understand where it comes from, and why it's happening. So the counselor will ask questions so that the families are able to find the source themselves. And this will let them recognize what needs to change and how it can be changed. We will also look on the problem's influence on their lives and see how it negatively affects their lives. After exploring the problem and we know how it works, where it's coming from, we're then able to allow the family to retell their story. So this next phase is called reauthoring their story. And it's giving a chance for them to reconstruct what they did know and make it turn to something more positive and a better outcome for the family as a whole. So it includes the counselor enabling each member to fully grasp and understand what has happened and what they will do and what the preferred narrative would be like. After they're able to retell their story in a more positive manner, the next step would be to identify exceptions and unique outcomes. This means that we have to focus on when they were able to resist the problem. So at times, for example, when a family, their problem is like they always have an anger issue, conflict. But that's not always the case. So we got to look for those strengths and the situations when they're able to look past that, overcome that anger, and actually come to an agreement. Now, we're heading towards the final phases, and this will include facilitating definitional ceremonies. And this includes getting together significant select people in the family's lives, and they will listen into what the family's narratives are. Now, what this does is it gives important people in their lives a chance to listen in onto their goals, what they want their narrative to be. And what happens after is that after the families finish talking about their narrative, the significant select people will retell them what, in their perspective, what they see, what they have heard in their own words. And after this, the family again will say their new narrative, but incorporate what the other people's perspective was, and this will solidify their positive and more engaging point of view. So that's all for the traditional narrative therapy techniques. Thanks again for listening, and hope you guys learned something from this.
Hello, my name is Senna. I'm part of the Child and Youth Care program. Today in this conference, I will be discussing narrative family therapy and the different approaches that you can use. To start off, narrative therapists empower their clients by getting them to recognize their own stories and consider different ways of viewing their situation. As a counselor, viewing a new perspective also allows us to be flexible and consider new interpretations of the stories the clients choose to share with us. While working with families, we must take on a strength-based approach by getting to know them more than just their problems. By doing so, therapists must consider the social constructionism approach, which values family stories more than the facts that we read in clinical reports and such. This modern-day approach for family narrative therapy, essentially you would focus on engaging clients in conversations regarding their everyday life, such as gaining more information about the family dynamics at home, the client's hobbies, how they view life, and so on, just to gain a better understanding of strengths that they have. This also gives therapists insight into social and cultural norms that impact a client's interpretation of the situation they may be in. For example, you may be able to understand why a family that is struggling to understand a member that has a mental illness because culturally speaking, in their family, this is a very taboo subject. So from this, a counselor can move forward and plan an intervention by allowing clients to view why these perspectives exist in the first place and slowly start to deconstruct them and reconstruct them into a healthier understanding. So now I'm going to discuss an example of where narrative family therapy can be used. An example of this could be a family going through a separation, where the husband believes the marriage should last forever while the wife opposes this idea. Essentially, the role of a counselor using this narrative approach would facilitate dialogue amongst the family to help them better explore different perspectives and find a new way of viewing their situation. During this, as a counselor, you want to also be able to externalize the problem. This can be done by separating the issue from the family. So you're seeing these two things as two completely different things. Oftentimes, family members believe that another person is causing the problem or they are part of the problem, which leaves individuals dealing with some very difficult emotions. This is a signature technique for narrative therapists, as you are able to focus on decreasing the family members from blaming one another and focus on unifying them as a strong family.
Hi, my name is Harold Fajardo. I'm a child and youth care practitioner, and I'll be showing how to use a sand tray activity for narrative-focused therapy. So what you actually need for this activity is a tray to hold all the sand. The tray that we have here is really small and it's red and circular, but what you actually want is something that's bigger, more rectangular, and actually specifically has a blue bottom painted. And you also need sand, of course. The sand that we're using in this activity is specifically kinetic sand. Kinetic sand is very easily moldable. It's easy to manipulate and kind of turn into different kinds of forms for the sake of the activity. And also is very useful for the activity if molding material is unavailable. What you also need is a variety of different objects to be used in the sand world. These objects should come in different sizes, shapes, and colors, and it doesn't necessarily have to be animals or humans. It can be, like in here you see Wally, he's a robot, or it is a robot, and you can show a different selection of objects. It can be trees or cubes even, and this will represent the client's significant symbolic figures in their life, and it'll allow you to kind of interpret the meaning of their little world. So basically what you want to do before starting off the activity with your client is to actually explain how the activity will be going down. So you want to explain to them that the sand tray will be used to kind of create a pictures and kind of related to how it's similar to drawing a picture. And instead of drawing a picture, you're going to be using a sand tray, and you're going to be giving materials like these toys and objects to create your own little world, as if you were drawing your own little world, but more in a four-dimensional way. And so what you want to start off with is to provide the sand tray to them, and then let them just feel around with the sand. Let them feel the sand, manipulate it a little bit, and also just take in their surroundings and the objects available to them. After you're able to describe to them what the sand tray is and how to use it, let them know that you will also be recording and taking down the different objects that they use and the different figures and their positioning and everything, just for the sake of the activity and just to be transparent in your motives and the whole meaning of the activity. After this, you want to ask your client to build their sand tray world using the objects given. So at this point, you need to kind of just take on the role of being a silent observer. Just kind of allow your client to just intermingle within their own world, to just focus solely on their own world and building it, and give them a time frame of about 30 minutes to maybe 40 minutes if it's a 1 hour session, because then after that, you're going to be asking some questions when they're done building their world. So keep on letting them create their own creation and let them be their own creator, basically. And at some point in time, they need to allow you to enter their world. So once they have invited you into their world, then you can start asking some questions. And there are specific questions you kind of want to ask, especially when it comes to the different kinds of information that you want to gain from this activity. Some really good questions that you want to ask are more open-ended questions and more leading closed questions. So you might want to ask about something about an object and its positioning or its meaning. So you can ask like, what does this object mean to you? What is it supposed to represent? And that's just a simple question that you can ask, but you can also actually ask other questions like, what was it like to pick up this certain object here? What was it like to feel this object? What was it like to put it in its current positioning, and even ask why they positioned it that way. You can also ask around what their feelings were when throughout the whole activity, how they felt when they were using a certain object. And you can even ask things about the object in terms of how the object feels. If they projected feelings onto that object and they have characterized it to have feelings, you can ask, so how did it feel for this object to be put into this world? How did it feel incorporating this person or thing into your own little sand world? And basically these questions can help us therapists infer feelings and projections and a variety of different therapeutic meanings to it, so that we can evaluate the client and just understand their world and their perception of things better. And basically, you just want to keep asking these questions until you record enough information, until you gather enough information. Other questions that you can actually ask is, if a certain object can talk, what would it say? And this allows the client to kind of project their feelings and words into the material and kind of make it talk. You can also ask them to make it talk and ask how does it talk? What kind of person or thing is this? How do they act and such? And this will also expose some more information for the client and allow them to explain more about their own world. So after this, you want to kind of just do a reflection on it and also thank your client for allowing you to enter their own little world, and also thank them for participating in the activity, and encourage them to, if you're going to be using it in future activities, encourage them to use more objects and such, and maybe different positionings and such if this is an ongoing activity. And after that, just really reflect on what they have said and what they have expressed to you. And that's all for this entry activity. Thank you.